Alright, so this is book 6, The Princess and the Stranger. So just to recap, I want you to remember how Odysseus, the last thing he did was he fell asleep. And he's hiding underneath some leaves, and he's on this island. He's just been attacked. He's exhausted, so he's asleep. So there he lay at rest, the storm-tossed great Odysseus, borne down by his hard labors first, and now deep sleep as Athena traveled through the countryside and reached the Phaeacian city. Years ago they lived in a land of spacious dancing circles. Hyperia, all too close to the overbearing Cyclops, stronger, violent brutes, who harried them without end. So their godlike king, Nausithous, led the people off in a vast migration, settled them in Syria, far from the men who toil in this city, on this earth. He flung up walls around the city, built the houses, raised the gods' temples, and shared the land for plowing. But his fate had long since forced him down to death. And now Alcinous ruled, and the gods made him wise. Straight to his house the clear-eyed Pallas went, full of plans for great Odysseus' journey home. She made her way to the gaily painted room, where a young girl lay asleep, a match for the deathless gods in build and beauty. Nausicaa, the daughter of generous King Alcinous, 2 handmaids, fair as the Graces, slept beside her, blinking the 2 posts with the gleaming doors closed. Okay, so Athena, while Odysseus is sleeping, is in the Phaeacian city. That's where Odysseus is. That's where Zeus had planned for him to go. And this is a little bit of their backstory. So we know that their king was like a god, and he took the people to this other place. He built the city, built the houses, built temples, but he's since then died. So now King Alcinous rules, and he's wise because the gods give him this. King Alcinous is someone you're going to add to your characterization chart, and you're going to talk about how he is wise. And then we also are going to talk about his daughter, Nausicaa. You can add her to the characterization chart as well. We also have more description of King Alcinous. He is generous King Alcinous. And then you have a simile here that can go under figurative language. 2 handmaids, fair as the Graces, slept beside her. So the 2 handmaids, fair as the Graces. Handmaids were servants, and the Graces are goddesses. They're beautiful. That's what they're comparing her to that. But the goddess drifted through like a breath of fresh air, rushed to the girl's bed, and hovering close she spoke, in face and form like the shipman Dymas' daughter, a girl of princess age and dearest to her heart. Disguised, the bright-eyed goddess chided, "Nausicaa, how could your mother bear a careless girl like you? Look at your fine clothes lying here neglected, with your marriage not far off, the day you should be decked in all your glory, and offer elegant dress to those who form your escort. That's how a bride's good name goes out across the world, and it brings her father and queenly mother joy. Come, let's go wash these clothes at the break of day. I'll help you, lend a hand, and the work will fly. You won't stay unwed long. The noblest men in the country court you now, all Phaeacians just like you, Phaeacia born and raised. So come, first thing in the morning, press your kingly father to harness the mules and wagon for you, all to carry your sashes, dresses, glossy spreads for your bed. It's so much nicer for you to ride than go on foot. The washing pools are just too far from town." Alright, so remember that we have Athena here. You can add this to your events because we talk a lot about how Athena disguises herself. So I want to make sure that you are writing this down. So Athena disguises herself to look like this girl, Dymas' daughter, who is a good friend of Nausicaa's. So Nausicaa's asleep, and her friend comes in and says, "You need to pick up your clothes. What a mess. You're going to be probably getting married soon." So she is of marriageable age, and there are a lot of men courting her, which means they want to marry her. And so Athena, disguised as Dymas' daughter, is convincing Nausicaa in the morning that she should go and wash her clothes. Let's get a wagon and let's do all these things. But remember, Athena's goal is to help Odysseus, so she's setting stuff up again to help him. You have the first line there is figurative language. But the goddess drifted like a breath of fresh air, and that is a simile. So make sure you get that written down. And then we're going to here start where Nausicaa, so Athena just finished telling Nausicaa what she should do, and that's where we'll start on the next slide. With that, the bright-eyed goddess sped away to Olympus, where, they say, the god's eternal mansion stands unmoved. Never rocked by gale winds, never drenched by rains, nor do the drifting snows assail it. No, the clear air stretches away without a cloud, and a great radiance plays across that world where the blithe gods live all their days in bliss. There Athena went, once the bright-eyed one had urged the princess on. Dawn soon rose on her splendid throne, and woke Nausicaa finely gowned. Still beguiled by her dream, down she went through the house to tell her parents now, her beloved father and mother. She found them both inside. Her mother sat at the hearth with several waiting women, spinning yarn on a spindle, lustrous sea-blue wool. Her father she met as he left to join the lords. At a council island, nobles asked him to attend. She stepped up close to him, confiding, "Daddy dear, I wonder, won't you have them harness a wagon for me, the tall one with the good smooth wheels, so I can take our clothes to the river for a washing? Lovely things, but lying before me all soiled." Okay, so we talked earlier about the hearth and about the spinning and using the spinning yarn and spindle. And that should be under your notes under theme. We did that a couple books ago. I want you to add that Nausicaa's mother is working at a spindle, which is similar to what Penelope was working on. So I want you to add that because it's the idea of a good and strong woman who takes care of her home and her family. That's the kind of woman that would have worked at something like this. So we also have Nausicaa coming in. She's asking her dad, just like she had seen Athena ask her, and she thought it was a dream. And so she's asking them to get this ready for her so she can go wash her clothes. Even though she's a princess, she still would have done things because, like we talked about before we started reading, not all royalty was rich. Being royal did not mean you had a lot of money. And you yourself, sitting among the princes, debating points at your council, you really should be wearing spotless linen. Then you have 5 sons, full grown in the palace, 2 of them married, but 3 are lusty bachelors, always demanding crisp shirts, fresh from the wash, when they go out to dance. Look at my duties, that all rests on me. So she coaxed, too shy to touch on her hopes for marriage, young warm hopes in her father's presence. But he saw through it all and answered quickly, "I won't deny you the mules, my darling girl. I won't deny you anything. Off you go in them and we'll harness a wagon, the tall one with the good smooth wheels, fitted out with a cradle on the top." With that he called to the stablemen, and they complied. They trundled the wagon out now, rolling smoothly back to the mule team into the traces, hitched them up, while the princess brought her finery from the room and piled it into the wagon's polished cradle. Her mother packed a hamper, treats of all kinds, favorite things to refresh her daughter's spirits, poured wine in a skin, and as Nausicaa climbed aboard, the queen gave her a golden flask of suppling olive oil for her and her maids to smooth on after bathing. Then, taking the whip in hand and glistening reins, she touched the mules to a start, and out they clattered, trotting on at a clip, bearing the princess and her clothes, and not alone, her maids went with her, stepping briskly too. Once they reached the banks of the river, flowing strong where the pools would never fail, with plenty of water, cool and clear, bubbling up and rushing through to scour the darkest stains, they loosed the mules out from under the wagon yoke and chased them down, the river's rippling banks, to graze on luscious clover. Down from the cradle they lifted the clothes by the armload, plunged them into the dark pools, and then stamped them down in the hollows, one girl racing to the next to finish first, until they'd scoured and rinsed off all the grime. Then they spread them out on a line along the beach, where the surf had washed a pebbly scree ashore. And once they'd bathed and smoothed their skin with oil, they took their picnic, sitting along the river's banks and waiting for all the clothes to dry in the hot noon sun. This is a very cultural event, and at this time people would bathe in pools like this. Like if you had really clean, clear water, that's where you would bathe. And they would rub olive oil on their skin because it's really good for your skin. It would make their skin soft, and it made it look fresh and young. And so that was a common thing. Not everyone had olive oil, so they're royalty, so this is a treat. So this is what they did. They bathed and then they rubbed their skin with oil. Now, fed to their heart's content, the princess and her retinue threw their veils to the wind, struck up a game of ball. White-armed Nausicaa led their singing, dancing beat, as lithe as Artemis with her arrows striding down from a high peak. Taygetus' towering ridge, or Eurymanthus, thrilled to race with the wild boar or bounding deer, and nymphs of the hills race with her, daughters of Zeus, whose shield is storm and thunder, ranging the hills in sport, and Leto's heart exults, as head and shoulders over the rest her daughter rises. Unmistakable, she outshines them all, though all are lovely. I want you to pause here. There's a couple of things I want you to put down under figurative language. You have white-armed Nausicaa. That's another epithet. It's describing Nausicaa. She's very fair. At this time, that was a sign of royalty and beauty. And then you also have a simile, as lithe as Artemis with her arrows striding down. Lithe means like quick, flexible, and so they're comparing her to Artemis, who is a goddess, which is a very big compliment. All right, let's keep going. So Nausicaa shone among her maids, a virgin still unwed. But now as she was about to fold her clothes and yoke the mules and turn for home again, now clear-eyed Pallas thought of what came next, to make Odysseus wake and see this young beauty, and she would lead him to the Phaeacians' town. The ball. The princess suddenly tossed it to a maid, but missed the girl, splashed in a deep, swirling pool, and they all shouted out. And that woke great Odysseus. Okay, so remember again, Pallas is Athena. So clear-eyed Athena, or clear-eyed Pallas, it means Athena is thinking clearly. So she's like, oh, I have a plan, because she wants them to find Odysseus. She has set all this up so these girls will find Odysseus. So we have the princess, and we have her two maids with her. They've made a lot of noise, and Odysseus wakes up. He sat up with a start, puzzling, his heart pounding. Man of misery, whose land have I lit on now? What are they here, violent, savage, lawless, or friendly to strangers, God-fearing men? Listen, shouting, echoing around me, women, girls, or the nymphs who haunt the rugged mountain tops and the river springs and meadows lush with grass. Or am I really close to people who speak my language? Up with you, see how the land lies, see for yourself now. Muttering so, great Odysseus crept out of the bushes, stripping off with his massive hands a leafy branch from the tangled olive growth to shield his body, hide his private parts. And out he stalked, as a mountain lion exultant in his power strides through wind and rain, and his eyes blaze as he charges sheep or oxen or chases wild deer. But his hunger drives him on to go for flocks, even to raid the best defended homestead. So Odysseus moved out, about to mingle with all those lovely girls. Naked now as he was, for the need drove him on. A terrible sight, all crusted, caked with brine, they scattered in panic down the jutting beaches. Okay, so Odysseus wakes up, he talks to himself like, great, what kind of people are these? I just hear them yelling, I don't know what I'm going to see and what I'm going to walk out to. And so he tries to kind of cover himself up, because remember he lost his clothes because he was drowning. He dove into the ocean, he was given that scarf to wrap around himself. So then he came out, threw the scarf back in the water, and went to sleep. He's dirty. He's covered in dirt and mud and gross, and so he scares the girls because he looks so gross and dirty. Only Alcinous's daughter held fast, for Athena planted courage within her heart, dissolved the trembling in her limbs, and she firmly stood her ground and faced Odysseus, torn now. Should he fling his arms around her knees, the young beauty, plead for help, or stand back, plead with a winning word, to beg her to lead him to the town and lend him clothing? This was the better way, he thought. Plead now with a subtle winning word and stand well back. Don't clasp her knees. The girl might brindle. Yes. He launched in at once, endearing, sly, and suave. Here I am at your mercy, princess. Are you a goddess or a mortal? If one of the gods who rule the skies up there, you're Artemis to the life, the daughter of mighty Zeus. I see her now. Just look at your build, your bearing, your lithe, flowing grace. But if you're one of the mortals living here on earth, 3 times blessed are your father, your queenly mother, 3 times over your brothers too. How often their hearts must warm with joy to see you striding into the dances, such a bloom of beauty. True, but he is the one more blessed than all the other men alive, that man who sways you with gifts and leads you home his bride. I have never laid eyes on you, anyone like you, neither man nor woman. I look at you and a sense of wonder takes me. So Odysseus wants her to help him and basically give him food, give him clothing, let him clean up. And so he's trying to decide, do I beg her? And that's what it means by throw his arms on her knees, like he's begging. Or he's like, should I just like try to say sweet things to her? And he picks that one. So he's like, you're so beautiful, and your mother and father and your brothers must be so proud and honored to have you, and you're so great. And he says all these things, and he's trying to flatter her. Wait, once I saw the like in Delos beside Apollo's altar, the young slip of a palm tree springing into the light. There I'd sailed, you see, with a great army in my wake, out on the long campaign that doomed my life to hardship. That vision! Just as I stood there gazing rapt for hours, no shaft like that had ever risen up from the earth. So now I marvel at you, my lady, rapt, enthralled, too struck with awe to grasp you by the knees, though pain has ground me down. Only yesterday, the 20th day, did I escape the wine-dark sea. Till then, the waves and the rushing gales had swept me on from the island of Ogygia. Now some power has tossed me here, doubtless to suffer still more torments on your shores. I can't believe they'll stop. Long before that, the gods will give me more, still more. Compassion, princess, please. You, after all that I have suffered, you are the first I've come to. I know no one else, none in your city, no one in your land. Show me the way to town, give me a rag for cover, just some cloth, some wrapper you carried with you here, and may the good gods give you all your heart desires, husband, house, and lasting harmony too. No finer, greater gift in the world than that, when man and woman possess their home, 2 minds, 2 hearts that work as one, despair to their enemies, joy to all their friends, their own best claim to glory. Stranger, the white-armed princess answered staunchly, friend, you're hardly a wicked man, and no fool, I'd say. It's Olympian Zeus himself who hands our fortunes out, to each of us in turn to the good and bad, however Zeus prefers. He gave you pain, it seems. You simply have to bear it. But now, seeing you've reached our city and our land, you'll never lack for clothing or any other gift. The right of worn-out suppliants come our way. I'll show you our town, tell you our people's name. Phaeacians we are, who hold this city and this land, and I am the daughter of generous King Alcinous. All our people's power stems from him." She called out to her girls with lovely braids. "Stop, my friends! Why row when you see a man? Surely you don't think him an enemy, do you? There's no one alive, there never will be one, who'd reach Phaeacian soil and lay it to waste." Alrighty, so we have Nausicaa, who is talking to Odysseus. And Odysseus, again, he was still begging her for clothing to take care of him, to help him. And she's like, the gods decide our fates. But she's looking at these girls and she's like, "We're going to help you." And she's like, "Why are you people running away? It's just a man. He's not dangerous and we just need to help him." And so she's told him, "I'm the princess and there's nothing that you're going to need while you're here. We're going to give you clothes. We're going to give you food. We're going to give you a place to stay. So there's nothing you're going to need as long as you are staying with us. The immortals love us far too much for that. We live too far apart out in the surging sea, off the world's end. No other mortals come to mind with us, but here's an unlucky wanderer strayed our way, and we must tend him well. Every stranger and beggar comes from Zeus, and whatever scrap we give him, he'll be glad to get. So quick, my girls, give our newfound friend some food and drink, and bathe the man in the river, wherever you find some shelter from the wind." At that they came to a halt and teased each other on, and led Odysseus down to a sheltered spot where he could find a seat, just as great Alcinous' daughter told them. They laid out a cloak and shirt for him to wear. They gave him the golden flask of suppling olive oil and pressed him to bathe himself in the river's stream. Then thoughtful Odysseus reassured the handmaids, "Stand where you are, dear girls, a good way off, so I can rinse the brine from my shoulders now and rub myself with oil. How long it's been since oil touched my skin." So there is some figurative language. Surging sea, the very top, is alliteration again. And remember, it's Alliteration. And so again, Nausicaa has explained to her maids, "We need to help this guy. Everyone Zeus sends to us, we need to take care of." And these people we talked about a little bit earlier, the Phaeacians, were almost like gods. So if they had that close relationship with the gods, they're going to be very respectful of the gods. And so that's why Nausicaa is talking so much about respecting the gods. They also then give Odysseus clothes to wear and that olive oil. So if you think about being in the sea, he's been up there for 20 days with the wind and being in the sea, being tossed around, being filthy, his skin is probably really, really dry. And oil is a treat. Like, it's something you would rub on your skin like lotion. And that's essentially what they gave him. They gave him something to basically refresh his skin. And so he's able to go bathe and get some clothes and clean himself before he goes into the town or the city. "But I won't bathe in front of you. I would be embarrassed, stark naked before young girls with lovely braids." This is important, and I just want to stop for a minute and explain this. When girls have braids, it usually is a sign of them being young. And especially in this day, women didn't wear their hair in braids when they were older. When they were like mature women, it was only when they were young. The handmaids scurried off to tell their mistress. Great Odysseus bathed in the river, scrubbed his body clean of brine that clung to his back and broad shoulders, scoured away the brackish surf that caked his head, and then once he had bathed all over, rubbed in oil and donned the clothes the virgin princess gave him. Zeus's daughter Athena made him taller to all eyes, his build more massive now, and down from his brow she ran his curls like thick hyacinth clusters full of blooms. I want to pause here again. Hyacinth is a flower, and they're just describing how Athena made him appear like a warrior. He was taller, he was more muscular, his hair looked attractive. All these things to make him appear better. As a master craftsman washes gold over beaten silver, a man of the god of fire and Queen Athena trained in every fine technique, she finishes off his latest effort, handsome work. So she lavished splendor over his head and shoulders now, and down to the beach he walked and sat apart, glistening in his glory, breathtaking, yes. And the princess gazed in wonder, then turned to her maids with lovely braided hair. "Listen, my white-armed girls, to what I tell you. The gods of Olympus can't be all against this man, who's come to mingle among our noble people. At first he seemed appalling, I must say. Now he seems like a god who rules the skies up there." We have two epithets that I want you to add to your figurative language. Great Odysseus. And if you have this one, you can write ×2 like we did before. You don't need to repeat it. And then white-armed girls, that's toward the bottom. It's a description of the maids, but white-armed girls is still an epithet. You also have a simile. It is in the very center. As a master craftsman washes gold over beaten silver. a man, the god of fire, and Queen Athena trained every fine technique and finished off his latest effort. So it's describing how a craftsman, someone who creates things, would wash gold over silver to make it beautiful. And that's basically what Queen Athena was doing with Odysseus. She was washing him over with her powers to make him more attractive. Ah, if only a man like that were called my husband, lived right here, pleased to stay forever. Enough. Give the stranger food and drink, my girls. And that was still Nausicaa talking. So she's saying that she wants a man like that to marry. She's of marrying age. At that point in time, the men always went to the father, and the father usually chose a husband. So she wants to get married. She's at that age. So she's like, oh, I wish I could find a husband like Odysseus. That'd be perfect. They hung on her words and did her will at once. Set before Odysseus food and drink, and he ate and drank. The great Odysseus, long deprived, so ravenous now. It seemed like years since he had tasted food. The white-armed princess thought of one last thing. Folding the clothes, she packed them into her painted wagon, hitched the sharp-hoofed mules, and climbing up herself, Nausicaa warmly urged her guest. Up with you now, my friend, and off to town we go. I'll see you into my wise father's palace, where I promise you'll meet all the best Phaeacians. Wait, let's do it this way. You seem no fool to me. While we're passing along the fields and plowlands, you follow the mules and wagons, stepping briskly with all my maids. I'll do it myself. But once we reach our city, ringed by walls, and strong high towers too, with a fine harbor either side, and the causeway and its narrow along the road, the rolling ships are all hauled up with the slipway cleared for every vessel. So she's telling Odysseus that when they're walking through all the farm area before they get to the city, she wants Odysseus to walk with her maids. Nausicaa would have ridden in the wagon with the horses, and they would have walked, because it's a sign of respect. The people who were upper class would ride in the wagon. And so she's telling Odysseus, at first I want you to walk. There's our assembly round Poseidon's royal precinct, built of quarried slabs painted deep in the earth. Here the sailors tend their black ships' tackle, cables and sails, and plane their oar blades down. Phaeacians, you see, care nothing for bow or quiver, only for masts and oars and good trim ships themselves. We glory in our ships, crossing the foaming seas. But I shrink from all our sea dogs' nasty gossip. Some old salt might mock us behind our backs. We have our share of insolent types in town, and one of the coarser sport spying us might say, now who's that tall, handsome stranger Nausicaa has in tow? Where'd she light on him? Her husband-to-be, just wait. But who? Some shipwrecked stray she's taken up with, from alien abroad? Since nobody lives nearby, unless it's really a god come down from the blue to answer all her prayers and to have her all his days, good riddance. Let the girl go roving to find herself a man from foreign parts. She only spurns her own countless Phaeacians round about who court her, nothing but our best. So she's afraid there's going to be gossip if Odysseus is riding in the wagon with her on the way to town, and she doesn't want all the men who are working on the ships, because that's where the majority of Phaeacians spend their time, and this would be the lower class. She doesn't want them spreading rumors. So they'll scoff. Just think of the scandal that would face me then. I'd find fault with a girl who carried on that way, flouting her parents' wishes, father, mother still alive, consorting with men before she tied the knot in public. No, stranger, listen closely to what I say. The sooner to win your swift voyage home at my father's hands. Now you'll find a splendid grove along the road, poplars sacred to Pallas, a bubbling springs inside, and meadows run around it. There lies my father's estate, his blooming orchard too, as far from town as a man's strong shout can carry. Take a seat there, wait a while, and give us time to make it into town and reach my father's house. Then when you think we're home, walk on yourself to the city, ask the way to my father's palace, generous King Alcinous. You cannot miss it. Even an innocent child could guide you there. No other Phaeacian's house is built like that. So grand the palace of Alcinous, our great hero. Once the mansion and courtyard have enclosed you, go quickly across the hall until you reach my mother. So, in this explanation, what she's explaining, Nausicaa's explaining, is that at this time, if they saw a woman in the carriage with a man, they would assume that she was either with him or marrying him or going to marry him, something like that. So she doesn't want those rumors to spread, because she wants to be able to get married and not have people thinking that she's with another guy. So she's telling Odysseus, I want you to wait in a certain place, and then we're going to get home, and then once we're home, come on behind us and come into the palace. Beside the hearth she sits in the fire's glare, spinning yarn on a spindle, sea blue wool, a stirring sight you'll see. She leans against a pillar, her ladies sit behind, and my father's throne is drawn up close beside her. There he sits and takes his wine, immortal like a god. Go past him, grasp my mother's knees, if you want to see the day of your return, rejoicing soon, even if your home's a world away. If only the queen will take you to her heart, then there's hope that you will see your loved ones, reach your own grand house, your native land at last. So she's saying, go to my mother first, because she's the one that's going to help you more than my father. He had to put himself at a lower place than the king and queen, humble himself and ask for help, because if he comes in with like an attitude of, well, I'm a king too, then they're not going to be as willing to help him, because they're going to feel like he's arrogant. At that, she touched the mules with her shining whip, and they quickly left their running stream behind. The team trotted on, their hooves wove in and out. She drove them back with care, so all the rest, maids and Odysseus, could keep the pace on foot, and she used the whip discreetly. The sun sank as they reached the hallowed grove, sacred to Athena, where Odysseus stopped and sat, and said a prayer at once to mighty Zeus's daughter. There is one simile I want you to add. Towards the top of this slide, it says a mortal like a god. That is a simile, and that is to go in figurative language. Hear me, daughter of Zeus, whose shield is thunder, tireless one, Athena. Now hear my prayer at last, for you never heard me then when I was shattered, when the famous god of earthquakes wrecked my craft. Grant that here among the Phaeacian people I may find some mercy and some love. So he prayed, and Athena heard his prayer, but would not yet appear to him undisguised. She stood in awe of her father's brother, lord of the sea, who still seethed on, still churned with rage against the great Odysseus till he reached his native land. So this is talking about how Athena hears the prayer, but she's not going to go talk to Odysseus as herself yet, because she knows that Poseidon's mad, and she's trying to do what's best for Odysseus to be able to get home, and she doesn't want Poseidon angry and still fighting against Odysseus. So this is where we leave Odysseus in this book. We're leaving him with the Phaeacians, and that's where we're going to have a summary and then pick up book 9.